Okay, hello. I'm back here with Justin. Long time since our last video. And we're here to continue reading Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Very exciting. And we're gonna do 3 chapters today instead of 2. Because the last one ran shorter than we wanted, so might as well read more. Why not? Yeah. So
Right.
yeah, 5 picks up right where 4 left off. And he's going to do the android test on Rachel, the Rachel Rosen that he met at the Rosen Corporation's headquarters. So he sets it up. This is to test if she's an android.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he does this regularly, or with, well, it's not clear if he does it regularly because he does it only against
People suspected of being androids.
But he also seems to claim that there are no more androids. Or he seems to claim, oh, we've gotten them all. But it's not sure if he's being facetious or if that's just his cover. You know, that's his line from the government or something like that. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he gives her the test and all of the questions, like, okay, so here's the first question he gives her is, you are given a calfskin wallet on your birthday. Both gauges immediately registered past the green and onto the red. The needle swung violently and then subsided. I wouldn't accept it, Rachel said. Also, I'd report the person who gave it to me to the police. So all of these questions are about like animals and like animal cruelty and like basic thing. Like I have a wallet in that I just found today. I lost it. But like, is this leather? It looks like leather. I don't know if it's like actual animal hide, but a lot of the things that are mentioned, like he mentions a bearskin rug, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, the bear died and they took its skin. You know, a lot of these seem like commonplace to me, you know?
I mean, they would be commonplace in our world, but this is a world where animals are kind of all endangered.
Mm,
So it'd be more akin to like those rhino tusk statues or elephant tusk kind of fit like ivory figure, like the whole ivory trade
yeah.
that's kind of becoming more and more illegal in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And yeah, it is a completely different world. But I mean, she talks about a little boy who like kills butterflies. And I'm like, that's me, you know? Like I was talking to some of my friends last night and they were talking about one time they went into this field and there were these giant bees that were they were like big like wasps or something. And they just took like wiffle ball bats and just started beating hundreds of like little bees. So
Yeah.
or fireflies, you could do it to fireflies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when we had that like big red-eyed cicada swarm where I live, like in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like some kids who like there was so many of them that you could just like walk around and step on 10 of them without really even noticing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like some kids that like when we were having our lunchtime at school, they just like went outside and started like stomping on any of them that they could find. And it was just kind of gross because it was like these were like big cicadas.
Yeah.
And they kind of left a pretty big mess.
Yeah.
While you were trying to eat. So I don't know if it was just like the gross out factor or the fact that it was just kind of such needless cruelty that kind of put me off of it. But it was just kind of like I can understand maybe like killing a bee or a wasp or something that's kind of like a threat to somebody, but when it's just like cicadas and the only thing that they really introduce that's negative is that they're kind of annoying because there's so many of them chirping out. It just sounds like a constant like death whine.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember cicadas were out when I was like 5 and I tried to step on one and then it like got really loud. They're cool sounding animals. But yeah, and so the idea is if she's more empathetic, she's more human and not an android, right? It's even towards animals. But
Yeah.
now we'd understand that, like, oh, this is a different world. They're more, um, they
Their
need to care
society
about the
puts
animals
more.
more. Well,
Yeah,
sorry?
their society puts more value on animal well-being.
But does that mean then that their test of what is a human or not is whether or not they fit into the societal ethics as much, and not so much like what is some more core thing? Because then, according to this, if I went to that society, I would not be a human.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could say that about a lot of people. If you don't necessarily fit into a culture, then you're kind of viewed otherly at the
Hmm.
very least.
Yeah.
Um, but I would also say that her actual verbal answers don't matter. It's all about like the initial like physical response of
Yeah.
her retinas.
Yeah. It's the instinct, or
Hmm.
it's the response time that he mentions.
And the final question isn't even about animals. He brings out his what was it? His like his suitcase or something,
Hmm.
and he says, "This is 100% genuine baby leather" or something
Yeah.
like that, which is
Yeah.
just kind of a really strange thing. It's like,
Like, I would have a delayed reaction just because I wouldn't believe him, Like, so it seemed like this is supposed to be the most secure test. It seems like a horrible test to me, honestly.
yeah. I
So
mean, but it is like science fiction, so
yeah,
there's kind of like a the science is fictional. So,
yeah, no, that's true. But so basically, they do the test and they deny that that she's an android, and then he says like, okay, the test
well,
failed.
she did fail the test, but she and her who is the Dr. Rosen supposed to be here?
Elder Rosen,
Yeah,
Eldon
Eldon.
Rosen, Eldon,
Is he her grandfather or
something like
uncle?
that. Yeah.
Yeah. He explains that, oh, she grew up on like a starship, so she doesn't really have it, because like it is kind of like what we said. It is kind of culturally based because she doesn't necessarily understand the cultural values that they have on Earth.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
she's not exactly adjusted to the societal uh, kind of traits that they're testing for.
Yeah. But then so they deny it, and then he does this final baby question, and then she fails it like more conclusively, and then they kind of admit like, yeah, she's an android. She didn't even know, you know.
Yeah.
So then that kind of shocks her, I guess. And so then Rick ends up going like, wow, that's like, so okay, that's what a Nexus 6 is like, and it almost beat the test.
Mm-hmm.
So he's starting to worry about it. And then he says he has to face 6 more of them. I don't know how he knows how many there are.
I think in the previous chapter there was like a report that there was a spaceship of so many androids that supposedly landed in California.
Okay, I got you. Is that where they are, California? Oh yeah, they're in San Francisco.
Yeah, they're on the West Coast, and I think he flew up to Seattle or something.
Oh, okay, I see. Well, yeah, that's all with Rick. But then we go back to John Isidore,
Mm-hmm.
and he's watching. He's going down to the apartment of the what he heard in chapter 2. He heard someone else is in his building, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes down, and it's he's bringing her margarine like as a gift, and it's some like he basically opens the door, and it's like a very messy, dirty apartment, but it's almost like a young girl living there,
Mm-hmm.
and and then it's soon revealed. He introduces himself, but they have a little bit of conversation, and she's very, very nervous. But it's soon revealed that she is Rachel from the previous chapter. So I guess she is an android. Huh.
Well, she introduces herself as Rachel Rosen.
Oh, so
I
maybe
think.
she's not an android. Maybe she's the original Rachel or something that was replaced. I don't know. But it seems like she was just dumped here by someone, you know?
Yeah.
But John Isidore is a little bit too dumb to like think like, one, I'm the only person that lives here. How did someone else show up here? Also, like, how does he get like electricity and stuff? Unclear. Who owns the building, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to find that real quick. But I think they're just living in an abandoned building for the most part.
Yeah.
And maybe they've rigged up a way to keep getting electricity.
Yeah. He says you thought no one lived in this building. You thought it was abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think from the way that the books described it, they believe that much of the earth is abandoned.
Yeah.
But then she also, towards the end of the chapter, she tells Isidore to address her as Pris.
Yes. She has a different name, or she says it's her married name. Yeah. But she's very like angry, kind of, or she's very
Standoffish.
yeah, standoffish. That's a good word. And very like, who are you? Like, she's understandably scared, right? That she didn't think anyone was going to be here, and this guy showed up, and she's just
Mm-hmm.
a girl alone. So she doesn't know who he is, but he's a nice guy. And he starts like commenting on like all the other apartments and like, oh, we can go in and get stuff for you from the other apartments because they're just kind of sitting there like rotting. And he talks about something being this word kippleized, right?
Yeah.
Which he goes like, oh, what is kipple? And he goes like, oh, kipple's like junk. So if you just leave something somewhere, slowly it gets kippleized. It just slowly turns into junk if no one's paying attention to it, right? And this is just, and so he calls it the first law of Kipple. Kipple drives out non-Kipple, like Gresham's law about bad money. Yeah, good money oh, I didn't even notice that. That's the thing in economics. Good money drives out bad money. And in these apartments, there's been nobody there to fight the Kipple. And this is very much to me like just the basic idea of chaos and order. The way that you combat chaos is with paying attention to it and upkeep. Upkeep has a cost, like a static cost over, not even static, it has a cost over time based on what the circumstances are. And kind of, you'd think like, oh, dirtiness in your house is a result of like outside chaotic forces, but really it can just be the result of your lack of organizing forces, so it's just like if you don't clean for a year but you don't do that much, things still get dirty just because of friction.
Yeah, when he brought up like kibble, I kind of thought of kibble, like what you feed to dogs and cats.
Oh yeah.
As just kind of being this kind of kind of the junk, kind of like the junk part of the animal that you just kind of end up grinding up and kind of feeding to animals because they'll eat just about anything.
I mean, that's a place to put it. It's not like a bad place to put it, right?
Yeah.
And that's a so like if I eat, right, I produce food, or I'm doing something I need to do to keep my body from decomposing, right? But at the same time, I'm producing waste. So if I don't at the same time, now waste like in human waste, but also like, oh, I've used whatever food, something to make the food, and I had a plate and stuff like that. And if I don't deal with that, that stuff builds up as well. So every single action, you need kind of like a counteraction to clean up the dirty parts of it. That's like what a cleaning or a purifying of anything is cleaning up the dirty parts of any normal action.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in most kind of simple terms, you could kind of look at it as like entropy.
Yeah.
Kind of like how things just kind of degenerate into disorder, if not upkept to a degree.
Yeah. And that's kind of what he says is he says, well, eventually it's going to win because eventually we'll all die and there will be no one here.
Mm-hmm.
And the law of Kippel is just like this. Yeah, it's like the law of entropy. Or I was thinking about just the fact that bodies decompose, right? If there isn't
Mm-hmm.
life in it, it turns itself into nothing, but into the dust from which it came. So, and then he puts Wilbur Mercer as an alternative to the final Kippelization. And I'm not exactly sure what he's talking about because he's saying, oh, Mercer even can get to people like me. And it's, I don't mean to draw a direct line to Christianity, but that's like one of the more unique things about Christianity is, oh, it applies to everyone, right? It
Mm-hmm.
even the like blessed are the poor, you know. So
Right.
as opposed to the pagan religions where it's like, yeah, well, there's people on top and there's people in the bottom. The end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that he's drawing a bit of a kind of a similarity with that, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's meant to be necessarily one-to-one. Although I don't think Philip K. Dick was necessarily the most religious person.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm not sure what he means. We're not so sure what Mercerism is. And he starts talking about his boss too, Hannibal Sloat, who's kind of saying that Mercer came from like the stars somehow, is some kind of like archetypal figure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what that means. Yeah, and so he says, yeah, he's telling her like, oh, you didn't bring your empathy box, and she goes like, oh no, I forgot it. Okay.
Or I was just going to get one here. And
yeah,
she does say like all these different things that seem to be atypical,
mm-hmm.
at least to Isidore, but Isidore himself is atypical, so.
Yeah. Yeah, and then she tells him that her name is Priss, and then they go, okay, well, then they met. And then the next chapter is again with Isidore picking up right there, right? And then I guess the next day or later, he has to go to work, and he works at like a pet hospital, like a veterinary hospital, right?
Yeah, a machine pet hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Or an android pet hospital.
Mm-hmm. So.
But it's, as demonstrated in this chapter, easily mistaken for an actual animal hospital.
Yeah. So they basically, the whole plot is they get like a cat in, right? That they need to fix, and that's kind of one of the plots. Is then so they have to do a video call with this woman who owned this cat, or her husband owned this cat that he really loved, and she can't really stand the thought of getting him a new cat. It would like devastate him because he loves this cat so much. So she wants to like get a replacement or a replica or something like that. But yeah, she's going through all the motions.
Yeah, like she's kind of appalled by the idea of getting a fake version of their cat because it would be kind of a mockery of the life of the cat, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But then she kind of rationalizes it to herself that she's going to save her husband pain.
Mm-hmm.
So she would consider getting the fake so that he might be spared whatever pain would result in the loss of his pet.
Another thing that I forgot about was the thing from the first chapter where they could like dial in their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that hasn't been mentioned since. So, are people like still doing that? Like, are all these people like on their fake emotion? It's unclear. Like,
Yeah.
at least Rick, you know?
I mean, it might be something that most people don't do all the time because it's kind of attached to their empathy box, which I would guess that they keep at home.
Mm,
So, or maybe it's something that they carry with them. It's not entirely clear,
mm-hmm.
but I think most people have like a preset program or something like that for like what they need throughout the day.
Yeah.
And then it's only Deckard's wife who's kind of gotten enthralled by the idea of like putting herself in these depressive states, or maybe it's more common, who knows.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the weaker aspects of how short this novel is that it doesn't it it could do a lot more world building, but that might get a little tedious
Yeah. Um,
and also get in the way and get in the way of itself.
yeah. But I mean, the history is very strange, and yeah, and how all these things are connected and how prevalent they are is not obvious because people they're talking about things like they're normal things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I was watching some lectures by Marshall McLuhan. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
I don't believe so.
He's kind of the guy that made like the communications its own field, or he was
Mm.
involved in that. And he had this famous phrase called "the medium is the message," where he was saying sometimes it doesn't even matter so much what the content of what you're communicating is, but how you're communicating it, and that completely changes like how the idea works. So
Mm-hmm.
communicating ideas through stories around a fire is one medium, and that is a way that has certain effects on the world, as opposed to through books, or as opposed to over the radio or over TV or now over the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and this came out in what, the 60s, right?
I think it was early 70s
Mm.
or something in there.
Still, it would be like 30 years at this point that TVs are now the main way that most people get news or radio, which is similar to the empathy boxes in that it's like we're all connected into one stream all together, as opposed to we all get to pick different books or we all go to different churches or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how does that relate back to the novel?
Well, because the like the empathy boxes, for example, right? This is like what
Mm-hmm.
everyone's doing at nighttime when they go home. Just like how this is what people watch TV or they go online when they're at home. And just this, not even like what Mercer is doing or whatever they're watching, or the whole thing with Buster Friendly, which we haven't mentioned yet. Just the fact that everyone is watching the same thing. There's, in a sense, in early TV at least, there was less diversity than with books.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's a more convenient form of communication, there's less diversity. And there's like privacy in that you're not with other people and your reactions are private, but there's commonality in that you're all reacting to the same thing, even if you all perceive it differently.
Right.
So We don't know where it's going. Yeah, I have no idea where the world is going right now.
Which world? The book world or our world?
Both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they just decide with this woman, like, yeah, we'll give you the cat. They'll do it, even if they think it won't work, right? It won't trick the husband, but that's what they decide to do. Yeah, and then and they talk about the TV too, and Buster is kind of, he thinks that John Isidore thinks that Buster Friendly, the guy on TV, is kind of mocking people that use empathy boxes or Mercerism. And so the way that I sort of thought of that is that the people, that there's this one sentence here. Isidore inside his head says like very profound things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So he has this, our minds, Isidore decided, they're fighting for control of our psychic selves. The empathy box on one hand.
You froze.
Oh, sorry. Oh.
No, you're back. It's fine.
Okay. All right. He says, our minds, Isidore decided, they're fighting for control of our psychic selves. The empathy box on one hand, Buster's guffaws and off-the-cuff jibes on the other. I'll have to tell Hannibal Sloat that, he decided. Ask him if it's true. He'll know. So the people that are living in this like terrible world, right? They've got different ways out. The Mercer way out, or the distraction way out, or the like entertainment way out. So you either deal with the horror of whatever's around you by engaging in the empathy machine and this like collective identity, or you just kind of distract yourself and entertain yourself and try to laugh it away.
Yeah.
That's how I think of it.
I thought it was kind of the one line that kind of was interesting was how Isidore asked if like Buster Friendly was like a similar concept or creation to Mercer because he puts out like 36 hours of entertainment each day or something like that.
Yeah.
So he's obviously some kind of like algorithm or something that's not existing in real time, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Because it could be easily rationalized that a computer program could put out more like content in our speed per, like it could put out a bunch of like material that would last us a certain amount of time each day. That would be more time than we would even have to consume it.
Mm-hmm.
So you are dealing with these kind of mechanical or ethereal kind of things that are kind of trying to influence the public in one way or another.
You know, the creatures of like the things that they create. Well, it's unclear if they created Mercer or Buster, but these things like are holding sway over them. These more abstract people are like the sides, if you will, like a god. Like Buster is a god of some people, and Mercer is the god of some other people. Yeah. Yeah, and that or just this is Buster is like a non-human thing, almost, whereas Mercer is like depicted as especially human because he's in the same struggle as everybody else. So it's easier for humans to identify with Mercer, like it is easier for humans to identify with Christ because he's human.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's why you kind of have all these different like ethnic depictions of Christ throughout the world for
Yeah.
wherever they are. Like you'll have Asian Virgin Mary and like the East Asia, and you'll have other depictions that will more close make it more relatable for whoever they're trying to reach out to.
Yeah. Like
And then some people,
mhm.
and then you'll get some people complaining that's like, oh, that's not how he looked historically, and it's just like, it's not really the point though.
Yeah. The yeah, but it then it becomes trouble when it gets confusing when people of that look different are in the same church, which just historically was not as much of an issue, right? So if you have
Yeah.
a church with a lot of white and black and Asian people, what are you going to make Jesus look like? There's no like common person, right?
Yeah.
Or there's no common easy depiction. So the focal point is make him look like what he might have
Yeah.
looked like historically, which isn't.
Or you do one of those like digital composites.
Yeah. Or like DNA tests or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Just take like the different percentiles of the ethnicity of your congregation and then make a digital composite of all those different ethnicities.
yeah. I mean, I don't.
I mean, there's no right
Yeah.
way to go about this. I think it's just kind of a fun.
There's no good
little-
solution to that kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's kind of the unique position that we find ourselves in the current times,
Yeah.
is trying to find a way to make that work.
Yeah. And those things, as long as you're honest about them, you'll come to some kind of common conclusion, I think. As long as people are like, well, this is the history of it, and if people are like actually like upset by it, don't like say, oh well, whatever, I don't care. You have to admit all the different feelings in their fullness, and then you integrate them. That's what I realized is different than like the opposite of segregation is integration, meaning you take all the pieces as they are and try to turn them into something new instead of giving an abstraction of all of them and then just telling them that they're all part of the abstraction. So like American can be like too much of an abstraction rather than like an integrated culture, or different cultures living in the same geographical region. They need some kind of common thing between one another. I'm getting into this now, but
we're getting a little into the weeds, but that's fine.
Yeah. But I think one of the interesting things was I watched this guy Jonathan Pajot, who's an icon carver, so he does like art of Jesus and stuff like that. And people ask him all the time about like, oh, white Jesus, like should Jesus be depicted as white? And then he goes, well, for most of Christian history, most of the traditions of art, white was not even something they thought about. They didn't even think of anybody as white. They thought of people as Greek or Roman or African or Ethiopian, they did not think of people as African. They thought of them as northern
Moorish
Egyptian or southern Egyptian or Libyan Libya wasn't. See, like we it's very in a sense, it's like backwards colonization to think of take all our modern categories and pretend that they should have thought in them.
Yeah. You can't. It's kind of a hard thing to reverse engineer.
Yeah.
Of like what groups people thought they belonged to, or what groups other people thought they belonged to. And like there's at least early on from what I've seen, the depictions of Jesus were fairly consistent. It was like he had longer hair, a mustache and a beard, and was of a fairish complexion.
Yeah. The earliest, I mean, it did depend on where you were, but the earliest images of Jesus, I don't know where the earliest images of Jesus are, there are some very early like cave churches in Ethiopia. I
Hmm.
wonder what he looked like in those. Let me
I
look.
think there was one in Egypt that they found, and he looked almost the depiction in that. I think it was like it was somewhere between like the 6th century and 9th century, and it looks almost identical to the depiction of Jesus in the baptistery of the Duomo in Florence.
Mm,
Like the depiction is nigh identical.
yeah. Oh, I looked up Ethiopian church icons, and some of them he's black, some of them he's like fair skin. So, I mean, they're artists. They depict him all kinds of different ways. You know?
And who knows the reasonings of why they depict him in a certain way in those circumstances either. So,
like another interesting thing that that Jonathan Peugeot brought up is in the traditional icons of Pentecost, right?
mm-hmm.
Paul is in the painting, and in the book of Acts, Paul is not at Pentecost, and the people drawing the icons, they know that Paul's not at Pentecost, but that's just how they draw that icon because they're trying to depict something larger than the historical event as it happened, like in the record. They're trying to show something greater than that. So when people draw Jesus in their own respective or
cultures,
Jesus in their own cultures, they're trying to show something larger than the fact that a guy lived at that point in time in that place. And also, usually when people are trying to depict him or like guess what he would have looked like historically, they're referring to like what the average Palestinian man looked like at the time, which is based on, I guess, a genetic record. But if you believe in the virgin birth, then I don't know how the genetics of a virgin birth work. Like, I don't know how we get to speculate about that either.
Yeah. So it's all Mary.
Yeah. So, well, or Holy Spirit. What is the Holy Spirit's DNA? I don't know. Maybe he glowed. Maybe he was green.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, very good. We had a bit of a tangent at the end, but it was an interesting one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm feeling like it's going to pick up soon. Like things are going to connect, and there's going to be an action scene soon. But,
I think it's in the next. Yeah, I think I got up to 9, and there's a little more action going on.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. We'll probably read up until 10 or something next time.
Right.
Very good. So yeah.